Here with us today, we have Melissa Dorman. How you doing, Melissa?
Doing good.
What are you about to do?
About to cold plunge in this really cold plunge.
It's even colder than the regular cold plunge that you do, isn't it?
Yeah, by 10 degrees.
Ooh, all right. Well, have at it.
All right, here we go. Woo.
In she goes.
Woo! Woo, 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 woo. Yes, feeling the burn. Mm-hmm.
Feel the burn.
Woo!
Those arms are getting a little lonely above the water. Let's get them in.
Yeah. Woo, now we're really feeling it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is cold. This is very cold.
Yep. It's I would make it warmer, but then it wouldn't. Then it would just be a plunge. Melissa.
Yes.
What's the hardest part about being a female entrepreneur?
Ooh. You know, my brain's not working too well at the moment. Let me just concentrate on that question. Okay, I think the hardest part about being a female entrepreneur is that regularly people don't take me seriously. They underestimate me.
Underestimate you.
Yeah, pretty regularly, and they look to whatever man is standing in the room and they ask him the questions that should be directed at me, and it just gets really awkward because I tend to know the answer more. And so, yeah, entrepreneur as a woman, it can be really challenging because constantly being underestimated, it's frustrating.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah. No,
But,
I feel you. All right. That was our cold question. Melissa's about to stick it out. Welcome to Frozen Millionaires, the show where we submerge successful people in ice-cold water, then sit them down to talk about how they've achieved success. I'm your host, George McCleary, and I have a penchant for ambition, for entrepreneurship, and for watching my friends suffer in cold water. No tech CEOs or Wall Street titans here. These are the self-made millionaires next door, and they're fresh out of the cold plunge and telling their stories. What's up, friends, and welcome to episode 10 of Frozen Millionaires. Today on the show, we're joined by another all-star of the Portland real estate scene, Melissa Dorman. Now, I've been a fan of Melissa's ever since I saw a presentation she did a while back, and I became a fan because it was clear to me that this girl knew how to hustle, and she also knew seller financing. And if you know me, you know I love seller financing. And that's essentially when the seller becomes the bank. They own the building outright with no mortgage, and then you buy the building and make payments to them. It's a great tool for acquiring real estate, especially in today's higher interest rate environment. So the hard part about this process is the trust factor. More often than not, the seller needs to get to know you. You have to earn their trust and convince them that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And this is where the personal side of real estate investing comes into play. If you're going to succeed, people need to know, like, and trust you. And if you're a trustworthy person and you do what you say you're going to do, then generally things work out for you. Especially in this day and age where everybody's so hyper-connected, word just travels fast. Melissa has leveraged the power of trust and relationships masterfully, and it's not just because she's trustworthy. It also is because her heart is in the right place in her deals. The objective is to make as much as you can on these real estate deals, but there's often more to it than that. The bottom line is important, but with Melissa, it's clear to see that it's about the triple bottom line. And those three bottom lines are people, planet, and profit. Success in business traditionally relates to financial success, and Melissa has achieved this, otherwise she wouldn't make the cut for the podcast, right? But as you no doubt heard me say in the very first episode of this podcast, I and all of my guests roundly reject the rich asshole archetype. We aspire to be a brand of business people that understand that capitalism and the good of the many can go hand in hand. So with that in mind, here's my conversation with Melissa Dorman. Here in the studio, we have my friend, Melissa Dorman. How you doing, Melissa?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. So we're going to hear all about your story today, but you're somewhat of a celebrity in the Portland real estate scene. I just got to get that out of the way right away. But I'm dead curious about your story because you are a true rags to riches. Am I right about that?
Yeah, definitely.
That is very cool. I think, why don't we start off with you just telling everybody who you are, what it is that you do, and where you are today.
Yeah, that's great. So I am currently a real estate broker. I have a team of agents at Living Room Realty. That's what I do with most of my time. And then I also own 32 rental units, and I acquired those over the last 6 years to attain that financial freedom goal. And Yeah, so that's kind of like who I am and what I'm doing these days.
So real estate brokerage, real estate investment, basically.
Yeah, those
Awesome.
two sides, yeah.
Something I know quite well, although I never really built out the brokerage side of the business. I'm going to have to ask you about that.
Yeah.
So, but you've owned 32 rental units. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and some of those are out of state. Is that right?
Yeah, 20 of them are out of state.
How do you manage that? How is that working out?
Yeah, I have a property manager for my out-of-state property in Ohio, but then the 12 units that are in Portland, I self-manage myself. It doesn't take...
You're self-managing those
yeah,
locally.
It's not hard. Yeah.
It's not hard.
No, about 5 hours a month, maybe.
I'm guessing they're like Class A, Class B.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
Great
okay.
tenants, great locations.
I've learned that the hard way around here. If you're going to own real estate in Portland and you're going to rent it out, make sure it's Class A or Class B. That's the more you know moment for today.
100%.
So you're kicking ass in real estate investment and brokerage. Why don't you just take us back? Because that's what I'm really curious about, the humble beginnings. So are you from here originally?
So originally from Long Beach, California. Grew up with a really middle-class, working-class family. Parents were in construction. I didn't know anything about money, which is really how I got started, honestly. My dad got really sick with Alzheimer's, and my parents were underprepared, to say the least, for retirement. Had no savings, had no game plan.
This is when you're how old?
At this point, I was in my late 20s.
Late 20s.
Late
Okay,
20s,
well, how about before that? Your
okay,
childhood.
even before that, yeah.
Take us way back.
Way back, way back. Okay, so yeah, I grew up in Long Beach. You know, most of my friends from my original neighborhood, they got caught up in either gangs or jail or early pregnancy or... it was a dismal start for most folks. And
Really?
I really was fortunate. My parents really cared about education. So the whole way through, they put me through private education. And so I had this contrast at school. I could see, people who are driving BMWs and have their life together. And I'd go home and it would be the hood. It would be rough. And so I saw both sides of that. And I'm fortunate that my parents put me into private school because it really did help me understand that there was a way out of the neighborhood.
Were you on some kind of scholarship, or were they just scraping to make ends meet to pay your tuition?
Yeah, they were scraping to make ends meet. I remember my mom worked out some deal with her employer. She took a really low salary and they paid for my high school education in exchange. Basically, she worked for my high school education.
Wow. Is this like a girls' school or a co-ed or?
It was a private Christian school. Yeah, it was pretty expensive at the time, and I'm really fortunate they made those sacrifices.
Wow, very cool. So then you finish high school, you go to college, or?
Yeah, I went to college, went to another Christian university, really did well there, figured out, coming from the hood, kind of figured out, okay, what is white culture? What do they value? What is it that I need to do to
How do
switch?
I fit in as a white person?
Yeah, how do I fit in? It was a strange question, but I figured it out in college, and I started understanding white culture and code switching, and I started to realize that, even though I came from really humble beginnings, nobody needed to know that as long as I was intelligent and I worked hard and I had good ethics. I could stand out.
Very cool. And where'd you go to school?
Went to Azusa Pacific.
Azusa Pacific?
Yeah, a small Christian college, and then I ended up going to UCLA for my graduate degree.
Oh, what's your graduate degree in?
I'm a licensed social worker, so I got a master's social work at that.
Is that
place.
so?
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So you finish up, and what are you first doing in your adult life post college?
So post college, the first thing I did actually is I moved to live in a slum in India, which sounds pretty drastic.
I'm glad we went back a ways because this sounds interesting. So you graduate from undergrad from this Christian college. You think, I know.
Yeah. I'm gonna go live in a slum in India. I had a real, transformation in college where I wanted to give back and I wanted to do meaningful work, and so I ended up getting into like sociology, humanitarian work, that sort of thing. And as a result of that, I ended up in the slum in Kolkata helping women out of sex trafficking for a year.
Holy smokes!
And it was an amazing experience.
That sounds heavy.
It was super heavy, and honestly, what I learned from that experience was that I wasn't being my authentic self. I was there for all the wrong reasons. It sounds funny to be doing charity work out of vanity, but that's kind of what I was doing, is I was there to prove something.
Huh.
Yeah.
What were you trying to prove?
So I came back home and I realized the reason why I was there is I was actually gay. And I was not wanting to confront that. And because I had grown up in this Christian environment, went to school my whole life, my parents were Christian, I was super Christian at the time, I just really wanted to be accepted by that community.
Do you think that was like repressing those feelings inside you?
Totally. I didn't even acknowledge it until I got home from India and I fell in love with my eventually ex-wife. Yeah.
Interesting. So you went over there like was it more like a clout play or like wanting to I guess, self-actualization,
Yeah.
but then you wanted to do something right.
Yes.
But at the same time, you ended up figuring out kind of who you are.
Exactly. It was a transformational experience, understanding that I was there for the wrong reasons, but I didn't know what I was compensating for until I got back. And then I realized, oh, well, I'm gay. So no wonder I'm like living
And
at
it
the
just
edge of
hit
the
you
earth.
like a ton of bricks.
Yeah. I realized, I met my ex-wife when I got back. I was finally just open to, who am I and what do I want? If I'm here living in a slum in India so people admire me, then who am I underneath all of that? And I realized, I was gay, and I was scared of that. And so then I was able to actually see that and start exploring my sexuality. And it actually led to me being my more true, authentic self, which is the starting point to building wealth for my journey, at least.
I love that.
Yeah.
So once you were your authentic self, and then your next thing you think of is, okay, how can I become independently wealthy?
But not quite that fast, but similar. So I got back from India. I spent a year there and came back trying to explore what I wanted to do. I decided I wanted to get into a social work program. And around that same time, I got through my social work program, got my master's, and my dad started exhibiting symptoms of Alzheimer's.
And he was older at the time.
Yeah. He was in his 70s, and my family was just completely unprepared for taking care of him. And so
financially, commercially, spiritually, everything.
Yeah, the whole thing. They just weren't ready for it. And so what ended up happening is, as he got sicker and sicker and needed real full-time care at home, they didn't have the money for that. And so we had to do something that I'm not proud of, but we went to our last resort, which was to ask my then homeless and drug addicted older sister to move in with my family and take care of my dad the last 2 years of his life.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
I mean, was that good for her? Bad for him?
Was.
Good for him?
It was good for her. It provided some stability. She really loved my dad. She took very good care of him. But in an ideal world, my dad would have had a much more dignified ending, I think.
Wow. And so if she was homeless at the time and then she went to go live and take care of him, she had a home, so that was good. But
Yeah.
did she remain like addicted to drugs and doing the self-destructive cycle?
Yeah, and she's, I think, trying to get off the streets now still, even though years and years later, by providing care to somebody else. So she's in her process of trying to become sober and well. But yeah, at the time, it was a real eye-opening experience that money matters. And if you don't have it, you have to make some really hard decisions.
You have to resort to doing things like having a drug-addled person take care of someone that you love.
Yeah.
That is really heavy. So is India. So is figuring out that figuring out your own sexuality in your mid-20s. So this is great so far. So then so you're back. You're taking care of you got your dad taken care of at this point, and then you enroll in grad school.
So I'd finished grad school, and my my second job out was working at LA County Jail. And so my dad's suffering. We don't have any means to take care of him. And that's when my wheels started ticking, like, okay, what can I do to solve this problem? And so I started, while I was in the jails working as a social worker, I'd spend about 20 hours a week in between processing inmates, because there's a lot of downtime in jail for inmates and me. And I would just spend that time reading books on real estate, start off with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, listen to all these podcasts, that sort of thing.
So you caught a bug somewhere.
I did.
How did you catch that bug? Was it from Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
It was.
Like with so many people?
It was.
So you catch wind of that book and you read it up, and like light bulbs start going off.
Yeah. And so I just spent like the whole year, 20 hours a week, studying anything I could get my hands on that was real estate related, podcasts, that sort of thing. And after a year of doing that, I moved up to Portland to start my investing process.
What attracted you to Portland?
My wife at the time, she was trying to get into grad school, and so she got into Portland State University. We came up here and visited, fell in love with the place, and it was so much easier to invest in Portland than LA.
So is this while you're finishing up grad school, or you finished up at this point? And
yeah, all finished up, moved up here. As in 2 or 3 years out, I'm a full, social worker, licensed social worker, doing work. Even up here, I started at the Salem Psych Ward. I even worked at OHSU as a social worker. So I was a social worker, but I was starting my investing journey up here.
Wow. So what was the first thing that you did?
So as soon as I got here, I actually went to an investor meeting, met Mike Nuss, who I heard was on the show too.
Oh, wow.
Started networking, and almost immediately started sending out like direct mail to find my first property, and did that in December.
And this is when you're how old? What year was this?
This is in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, 2017.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago, yeah.
Wow, you've made some real progress here.
Yeah, thank you.
Good for you.
So 2017, found that first duplex off market. Mike Nuss actually walked it with me, and he said, if you're not going to buy this, I will. And I knew that was a stamp of, I found a good one.
There you go. And were you a broker for Rarebird at the time?
No, I wasn't a broker, just a social worker, just sending out direct mail, trying to find my first live-in, FHA loan duplex.
But Mike took a shining to you, and then he started helping you out.
Yeah, he started mentoring me and started encouraging me.
Find a mentor.
Yes.
There's the first golden nugget of the day.
Absolutely.
So you buy a duplex.
Yeah, buy a duplex.
Do you value add, or what was your play?
So it appraised for like $50,000 more than I was paying for it. So I knew I'd found a good deal.
Score.
Tenant moved out. It was right when all those tenant relocation laws came in. So, successfully managed moving the tenant out and moved into the unit, renovated it. And then my dad passed away. And that was when I just realized I couldn't go back to work as a social worker. Like, I'd watched my dad go to work for 50 plus years, and not my whole life, but his whole life pretty much, and had nothing to show for it in the end. They had no wealth, and they had no ability to take care of him. And for me, I just couldn't imagine clocking back in knowing that it was for somebody else's dream. Like, I wanted to do what I wanted to do, which was to build wealth.
Right. And I'm guessing you weren't really making a ton of money as a social worker.
No. I mean, that first property, basically the equity that I gained when I closed was a social work salary. And I'd spent like 30 hours on that. So 30 hours making $50,000 versus an entire year as a social worker. To me, that was enough to quit my day job. Yeah,
sounds like it. Wow. So, but when you quit your day job, you didn't exactly have a soft place to land at that point. Because you owned a duplex, and it sounded like you bought it owner rock, so you could get good financing. And you were fixing it up.
Yeah.
But that's actually the same thing that I did in my origin story. The first thing I did was I bought a duplex. And if you haven't listened to the episode, a couple episodes ago, I talk about my first property purchase, and it's a duplex, and it was in the ghetto, and I fixed it up, and it ended up being a great deal, and it worked out great. But I knew that after I quit my job after that, I didn't really have a whole lot else in front of me unless I really got after it.
Yeah.
And so, is that what you did as well?
Yeah. So I basically quit my job with about $16,000 in my checking account, which was not a big runway. And
you probably had minimum living expenses at this point.
I was living on like $2,000 or $3,000 a month. So that was like, 5-6 months of runway.
Yeah, I was 23 as well, and had like an overhead of like $700 a month. So
I was smart about it. And then, I immediately got my broker license, and I actually started in the pre-foreclosure world. So I was headhunting people who were in default, and I'd get in their living room and I'd try to pitch them any number of solutions without, trying to prevent them from going to auction, basically. So getting ahead of the auction.
By either you buying the property or listing the property?
Actually, not usually. A lot of times it was, the redemption rights. It was also trying to just rent it out until it went to auction.
For those people who are not familiar with redemption rights, give us the short summary.
Yeah, so Oregon has this funny law that after it goes to foreclosure, that the person who went into foreclosure has 6 months, I believe, to buy the house back for what's owed plus like 9% interest. Which, if you imagine somebody in foreclosure, they've been there probably 5-10 years. They're not going to come up with that money in the next 6 months. They've lost the house. But they can sell the right to redeem to an investor who then could use that to flip the house or whatever. Or if the investor bought it at auction and they didn't have the rights to redemption, then the person who owns that could go take the house back after it's fully remodeled.
Yes, and that's led to some very interesting scenarios where people have bought houses at auction and then fixed them up, and then the house has been redeemed for what's owed on the property, and then that person says, what the heck, I just fixed this place up, and now you're telling me that somebody else owns it? And the answer to that is yes, that's exactly what is happening right now. So you don't want to be that guy.
No. I was the other guy, the one trying to buy those rights of redemption. We weren't necessarily sneaking up on house flippers. It was more to be able to negotiate with the banks to get the debt lessened or to do short sale or that sort of thing. It was leverage basically with the banks.
Gotcha. And you had Mike kind of guiding you on this.
No, Mike didn't. I was actually teamed up with Sean Morgan, who's a real estate attorney, and then also Jim Lerman. Those were my two business partners.
Cool. Yeah. Shout out to Sean. I know that guy.
Yeah, he's great.
Very cool. So what was your next deal? When did things start picking up from there?
Yeah, so after that, I had no money. So I every day would just like wake up and tell myself I'm going to find an off-market property and buy it seller financed, either using other people's money or very little of my own. And I did that for about 6 months, and I was cold calling 10 hours a week as a realtor, trying to like headhunt those people in foreclosure. And I accidentally stumbled across a guy who was a bankruptcy attorney, and he happened to be the bankruptcy attorney of a guy that I was headhunting who happened to be dead.
Oh, wow.
So it was an awkward moment when I was like, do you know so-and-so? And he's like, yeah, that's my client of 10 years ago. He's dead. Why are you looking for him? However, we started off a friendship right there, pre-foreclosure, and I'm a pre-foreclosure realtor, and he's a bankruptcy attorney, so we had a lot in common. And within a few months of that friendship, he asked me to do a CMA on his triplex, and when I looked it up, I could see that he'd owned it for about 20 years, and I knew in that moment that this was the property that I was going to get seller financing.
There you go.
Yep. So
seller financing, for those who are not acquainted, is when the seller acts as the bank.
Exactly.
And it's really great in that you can negotiate whatever terms you can negotiate, and without any middleman. A lot of times you're getting much more favorable terms than a bank, because bank has a lot more moving parts, big skyscrapers to pay people in. But seller finance, done a handful of those transactions myself, and I love them. But I didn't do one until just the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
But sounds like transaction number 2 was a seller finance deal for you. So you got the bug on that.
Yep. And that really helped me accelerate my growth as an investor, because that turned into several other deals and partnerships with that bankruptcy attorney.
Very cool. Wow. And so that was a triplex. So then, at this point, you've already got 5 units, and you've been in the game for just a little bit,
like a year. Yeah.
And so this goes on for a while, but eventually you pick up the big out of state deal. Is that what, more or less what happens next?
So I picked up a duplex before that. It was like a nice lot division situation. I actually teamed up with Mike Nuss on that, and I kept the duplex. They kept the lot divisions on it, and it was a win-win. We both walked away with about $100K.
There you go.
So that was a good one. And then after that, COVID happened, and rates were just an all-time low. And all of a sudden, that awesome 5% seller financing deal that I had negotiated didn't look as awesome anymore. So I called up the bankruptcy attorney. His name's Kelly, and I said, hey, would you mind if I did a refinance and maybe took that seller finance note, cut it in 2, and moved half of it onto some other property, so I'd have a lot of equity in the subject property to be able to do a cash out refi.
So that's basically taking the debt from that property and re-collateralizing it.
Yeah, exactly, onto 2 different properties. And so that left me with $205,000 that I got to pull out of that triplex, and that was my down payment for the 20 unit in Ohio.
There you go. And it's 20 units in Ohio. And how did you find that thing?
I had some clients who, on the broker side, that were telling me they were investing in Ohio, and they introduced me to a realtor, and so he helped me find that off market.
Nice. And that I remember hearing about this deal maybe at an investor lab event.
Yeah.
It sounded like it had some had some hair on it.
Yeah, it had some difficulties. So it turns out the seller, he also seller financed it to me, which was great.
Oh wow.
But the way that they reported the income and financials was bogus, and so I got the property and I realized, oh, actually 3 or 4 of the tenants are in jail, they're not paying. And so I took a lot of time to just turn this property around and to get a new property manager. And
oh wow.
And then on top of that, I just didn't realize, in Ohio it's really hot in the summers, and you're obligated to provide air conditioning, which is not something we are obligated to do in Portland.
Today I learned.
Yeah. And so I learned that the hard way, and it basically, in 1 month it was really hot in Portland. It was also really hot in Ohio, and I had to buy $5,000 AC units for units that were paying $500 a month. So that was, very painful.
You can get by in Portland without any air conditioning.
Yeah, you can. You totally
1
can.
month out of the year, it gets a little uncomfortable. You can get a wall unit though, and you can get by just fine.
Exactly.
But in other parts of the country, it's mandated by law. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Good to know. So yeah.
Very cool. So you pick up the big one. At this point, you've got 20 some units. You've been in the game for what, 4 or 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that had to be kind of the moment where you thought to yourself, okay, I've arrived. I am now a full blown real estate investor. You built some wealth at this point.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was getting to that point, and that's kind of when I started to transition to more cash flow orientation. I had all these properties, they're building wealth, and that's really great. Minimal cash flow though, and so I started investing in syndications after that.
Syndications. Okay. Yeah, just as an LP, as we were talking about before we were plunging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. And then also as a cash flow play, you are a high producing real estate agent. Okay, that's where you and I diverge, because I've done real estate brokerage, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, but I've never been like a top producing broker. But you've got like a whole team, and these people are selling units, and you're at the top of the pyramid. Explain that business to us.
Yeah, so when I first transitioned out of like the pre-foreclosure world and I decided, I want to do something a lot easier than twisting people's arms to sell their house before they go to auction.
Right.
Let me do something more profitable and let me just do like regular retail broker. When I did that, I met my business partner just a few months after I started thinking about building a team. And basically I created a format. He was an experienced broker. He had several years under his belt. I was brand new.
Right.
But as I sat down with him to talk about, what do you have to bring to the table? He said, well, I make about $450 a year. And I said, I can work with that.
Yeah.
So I just made him this deal. I said, hey, look, if I create systems and hire employees and I double the revenue of the company, I'd like to move from an 80-20 split where he's getting 80 and I'm getting 20 to a 60-40 split. And if I triple the business and make you 1.2 million or something around there, then I want to be a 50-50 partner. And so, he thought that was a great idea. He didn't think I could do it. 6 months, I doubled the company.
That's definitely an offer you can't refuse.
No, it's amazing.
If I'm doubling and tripling your business, I want a bigger bite of the apple. And
exactly.
That makes completely sense. Anybody would take that.
Yeah.
Deal.
So I basically hired full-time admin, built all these systems. We were paying for Zillow leads and started hiring on agents. And within 6 months, I had doubled the company. And within another year, I had tripled the revenue.
That is a crazy rate of growth.
It was, yeah.
Wow. And that's really like making a business, because there's buying real estate, which is technically a business.
Yeah.
You're buying space, fixing it up, and renting it out to people. That's a business. But brokerage and making a team, that's like advertising, marketing.
Yep.
It's HR,
Yep.
it's a bunch of things, and you had sounds like a really rapid ascent in that. What was fueling that? Before it was like a drive to financial independence. Is this lack of cash flow from when you own rentals? A lot of times, cash flow is not going to put food on the table.
Yeah.
It builds wealth.
Totally.
So the realty play is sort of the income.
Yeah.
Instead of the cash flow.
Yeah.
Instead of the wealth building, that is.
Yeah. So actually, what funny thing? So if my dad was the reason I got into real estate, my divorce was the reason I started my company. Because I suddenly went from living on $3,000 a month, that's what I'm used to as a social worker, to now I owe somebody a $2,000 nugget every month that, after taxes means I need $3,000 to get there. So I really need to double my income. And that's when I thought, okay, I need to start a team in order to do that. I need to maximize the amount of cash flow. And once I realized how to double, the equation to triple and quadruple and eventually 10x my income, it was the same equation. You just keep adding more supportive staff, more systems.
So you're putting in $1 into advertising and getting $1.20 back.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting $1 into recruiting agents to get $1.30 back.
Exactly.
And so you just keep building this.
Yeah.
It kind of snowballs,
Absolutely.
essentially. Very cool. I love that. So, which brings us to today. You've got a winning realty team.
Yeah.
Cash flowing for portfolio of real estate. And all wealth and income both coming in.
Yeah.
That's the dream.
That's a dream.
I love it. So along the way, we've got your watershed moments and your gut punches.
Yeah.
Watershed moments. It sounds like, I could pick a couple out, but one that kind of stands out is the big deal in Ohio. But maybe you all have something else in mind. Watershed moments where you think to yourself like, okay, this is the path. This is what I need to do. I've hit the big time, or this is a sign that I need to keep doing what I'm doing.
I almost feel like I'm in that right now. This past summer, I've been building my company for the last 5 years. I mostly work with investors. I really love helping people build wealth. It's, very synergistic to my own journey. But there's this part of me that really wanted to find some meaningful, more social work, rooted work. And
back to your Indian slum roots.
Exactly. I want to get back to my roots. And so it's kind of just putting that out there. I'm a big person on manifestation. And within maybe 3 or 4 days, I get this call from these guys out of Hawaii. And they have this nonprofit called Homes for Humanity, where they basically buy properties and lease them back to nonprofits so that nonprofits can have whatever services they need. And so they asked me, they saw my bio, they saw that I went to India, that I'm an investor, that I'm this nice overlap of everything they're looking for. And so I got to work finding some nonprofits, and I found a great nonprofit called Cultivating Initiatives, and they help homeless folks with getting into housing and medical services and jobs and that sort of thing.
And that's close to your heart because of your sister.
Yeah, it's close to my heart because of my sister, and it's also my first social work job was housing homeless folks.
Oh, wow.
And so I've
firsthand experience going through that process with folks. And so I said, yeah, sign me up. And so we've partnered with Cultivating Initiatives. We actually are pending on their first property. It's going to be a group home. And the idea is they need to place 60 people before June. And so I'm going to help them find the properties to create various group homes and apartment complexes.
Wow.
So they can
Does this
house them.
mean you get to go to Hawaii and look for real estate there? Or
Well, they got the Hawaii branch down, but I'm going to be the Portland contact, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's no shortage of homeless people in Portland,
Yeah.
and no shortage of need for that exact thing.
Exactly.
So this is a completely separate bag of chips and everything, but I've heard stories that when you take homeless folks and you just move them into a place, or you give them a place to stay, you can virtually, you've got a virtual guarantee that the place is going to be utterly and completely trashed.
Yeah.
So you've heard that too.
Yes, absolutely.
What are you guys going to do to prevent that and make sure that these guys or you don't take a financial hit from that?
Yeah, so that's the master lease part. It's like the property is being acquired by Homes for Humanity, but Cultivating Initiatives is the local nonprofit providing the services and the housing. And so they're going to be master leasing the property. They're going to be responsible for those. And with every one of those vouchers is included several $1,000s of money to do repairs. So it's built into it, but of course there could be, more. So we'll see kind of how it unfolds.
Wow. Well, that's great. And so it sounds like that's kind of a watershed moment, because it's a real validation of just how far you come and being basically handpicked for having like a social consciousness heart, and then also the real estate skills that can pay the bills.
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that for you. And gut punches.
Oh, gut punches.
Stuff that's gone wrong.
So that's gone wrong. Well, I mean, easy one is crypto. Lost like 50K there. That was stupid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so stupid.
Doge, Bitcoin.
Probably the whole thing. Who knows?
All the little altcoins.
Tons of little coins. I should have played with that. I think another, buying that 20 unit and realizing on paper this thing looked great, but when you actually buy a property out of state, it comes with problems you just aren't even aware that you can have. And so that was a big gut punch. I'm actually going to sell that this year, reorganize so I can get better cash flow, because that 20 unit only gets me like $1,000 a month.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio is kind of a lower tier type of market. Interesting. So crypto, finding out the one that you bought out of state wasn't all it's cracked up to be. What about, so your dad had gotten Alzheimer's, and he was kind of an inspiration for you to get into real estate.
Yeah.
Is he still with us today?
So he passed away in 2017, and I would say like the real, if we're talking about gut punch moments, and that year, that was probably the hardest year of my life. In June, I lost my dad, and about 3 months later, my wife's cheating on me, and about 5-6 months later, she's leaving me for that person. And so it was just, and I'm switching careers, right? I quit my job during that time, and I started as a real estate investor and broker. So within 1 year, I just have huge losses and huge shift in my career.
So that's like a triple gut punch right there.
It was a triple gut punch, yeah.
Wow.
And that really shook me and helped me to look at myself and go, what was my role? And as I looked around, I saw my relationship and my business partnerships at the time and that sort of thing. I realized, wow, I am not having good boundaries in my life. I'm not really advocating for myself, and I'm kind of a pushover. And so that was a big turning point for me. I decided I wanted to start my own team, start leading and not taking the short end of the stick anymore, really.
Kind of stepping into like a leadership type position and kind of leadership mindset, it sounds like.
Yeah. And then, in that process, her suing me for alimony caused me to have to solve that equation. How do I make twice as much money? And so that moment of pain and grit of figuring out how to do that did turn into my, multi-million-dollar company that I have now.
Wow. That's terrific. Wow. Good for you for adopting that mindset and kind of rising above that.
Yeah,
That's
it was
amazing.
terrifying. It was really hard here.
I mean, it's in those moments that we really kind of see what we're made of.
Yeah.
A lot of times, I mean, the reason I ask about watershed moments and gut punches is because oftentimes those are the things that really make us who we are and bring out the best in us. It's the people that really know how to get up off the ground after having been knocked down, because I know you've been knocked down, so have I, many, many times over our careers. It's not the knockdown. No. It's getting back up.
Believing in yourself.
And so often after you get up, you end up being stronger than when you first fell down. And you're a great example of that. After surviving a year that was divorce, death of your father, and this is concurrently with your homeless, drug-addicted sister having been taking care of him. So it was an ongoing issue that finally concluded, but holy smokes.
Yeah, it was a really rough year.
Wow. But then that same year, 2017, that was kind of when your real estate career really started blossoming, was it not?
Yeah, that's
no coincidence.
It's no coincidence. Yeah. So I think 2018 finally divorced. That was when I started my company, and it grew from there. And that was five and a half years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Man, you've done a lot more in 5.5 years than I have. Very cool. So we talked a little bit about building wealth versus income and cash flow. And it sounds like you first concentrated on the building wealth with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then you built the kind of the cash flow machine with the realty team. Is your plan to just continue growth of both those things equally, or are you more focused on one or the other?
Yeah, so right now I think I got the wealth side. I feel like 32 units or whatever that equity is. I feel like that's solid. I have enough. There's a point at which I think it's really important to acknowledge I have enough. But on the income side, I'm actually, I think, transitioning more into this like nonprofit work. I might be doing a little bit more coaching. I'm a licensed therapist as well. One of the gut punches that we haven't talked about is I've been chronically ill for the last 4.5 years, and doctors don't really know what it is, but I have really low
What's wrong with you?
The main symptom is I have incredibly low blood pressure. I wake up like 80/40, which is usually when they put you on like oxygen in a hospital.
Wow.
And so I drink a gallon of salt water every day in order to artificially increase my heart or my blood pressure. And I've been spending 4.5 years trying to figure out why. We don't know.
You would never know it. Clearly, you're in good shape.
I'm in good shape
and
now.
I've seen you wake surf before.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like it's affecting you day to day, but it sounds like it kind of. It's
there.
But it's there.
Yeah, people don't know because I went from being a year into it. Half of the days I couldn't get out of bed. I was completely immobilized. If I'd wake up and my arms would be shaking and I'd have a migraine and I couldn't see, like nobody could touch me or make sound or anything. Like I was so fragile, and like when your blood pressure drops like that, it's a very dangerous thing. And it took me a year to figure out if I drank salt water, I could kind of save myself. But that's still not, addressing the underlying issue. And
But we're not sure what the underlying issue even is.
No, I got like a brain scan coming up and a spinal scan, and they're going to send me to University of Washington to do a bunch of tests. They're still trying to figure it out.
And no working theory or anything.
I think, so the working theory is that it's probably something called a dysautonomia, which is a cluster of different types of symptoms and disorders, but more or less with the autonomic nervous system. So the things that control your heart rate, your blood pressure, that sort of thing. And often these things are actually triggered by either a trauma or like a really bad illness like lupus or Lyme's disease or something like that. And so the running theory is I had that really hard year in 2018, and then 2019, this happened. My body experienced the impact of all that stress.
Wow, you've had no shortage of the gut punches, for sure.
No, I've had quite a few, yeah.
And some of them are still ongoing,
Still
it sounds
going,
like.
still fighting strong.
And yet, you've kind of acknowledged that, you have enough at this point, at least to an extent, with the portfolio sort of building on itself.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're kind of pivoting a little bit more towards putting your energy toward more of like a personal, spiritual validation and actualization type of deal.
Yeah, exactly.
With nonprofits, helping homeless people, putting your wealth and knowledge to work.
Yeah.
That's very commendable.
Thank you.
Because pretty much everybody who comes on this podcast, including myself, is about making big to bigger and biggest.
Yeah. Totally.
As best we can.
Totally.
Get as much shit as we can before time runs out.
Totally.
But you, in spite of all the challenges you face, are devoting your energy more toward just like the good of mankind, it sounds like. And I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Very cool. Which brings us to, other than altruistic endeavors, where does your money go? What do you like to do with it?
I love to travel. I'm actually flying out to Turks and Caicos for about 9 days.
Like tonight, right?
Tonight, yeah. For like a live aboard. I love scuba diving. I love traveling.
Are you just going solo or with friends?
My best friend Kenton. Yeah. We're gonna go together. He's an economist at Nike, and just love traveling, scuba diving, that sort of thing. I do like these big monthly dinner parties at my house. I have like 30, 40 people over, and I just feed them. We have a good time.
Because you bought a nice house recently, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I bought Robert Rummer. He's a famous mid-century modern architect.
If you haven't seen a Rummer house, do yourself a favor and Google it. And this isn't just a rummer. This is kind of the rummer.
The rummer. It's his personal residence. So I bought that a couple years ago.
That's a thing. That is definitely a thing. These things sell very quickly and for high dollar amounts. And Melissa owns the rummer from from Mr. Rummer himself.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Yeah. And you actually have a little side hustle renting it out by the hour. Did I have that right?
Yeah, I've been music videos or events or photography or whatever. People will rent it by the hour because it's such a nice house. Yeah.
And how much does it go for per hour?
$100. Yeah.
$100 per hour.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know how much my house would rent out for, but it's less than $100 per hour.
Yeah.
I love that for you. That's very cool. Okay, so traveling, you got Robert Rummer's house, but it sounds like most of your money and energy is going to fixing the world.
Yeah. I've moved from the most important thing is building wealth to the most important thing is impact. I want to make an impact now.
Expand on what you mean by that. Just societal impact, social impact.
Yeah, I think I wanted to really establish wealth for myself so that I had that safety and that security net that my family didn't have. And once I got that enough number for me, I realized, okay, well, what is going to be meaningful? Because at some point, money wasn't motivating me anymore.
Right.
It wasn't going to change my lifestyle. Making an extra $1 million wasn't going to do anything substantial to change my life. And so it was like, well, what would be substantial? Well, making an impact. So I'm writing a book. I'm starting to do this nonprofit work. I want, I as a realtor, I can help maybe 30 to 50 families a year, which is great to help them build wealth. But if I write a book or if I do public speaking like I've been doing the last few years, like I can make a much bigger impact and change the hearts and minds of people around me.
That is very cool. And plus you really, you have the leeway after, if you're coming on this show, you've got an asset base of, at least $1 million, but if you've earned a few $1 million in life, I kind of think about it as there's a cliff behind you that is absolute, things are bad, food scarcity, not having clothes on your back.
Yeah.
That cliff for people like you and me is a long ways behind us. Yeah. It's very unlikely that's going to happen. However, the next plateau way out in front of us is like, what even is it? It's a faster car, a jet, a bigger house, things like that I'm just not, if I had that, I would be happy. It would be nice.
Yeah.
But it's not a goal for me, and it sounds like it's definitely not for you. And it's at a level of wealth that is very, very long distance, very long distance away. And you don't tend to get there in real estate very fast. No. Real estate is a great way to build wealth at a slow rate of speed, but that's very steady and reliable. If you really stick with it for a few decades, there's a very good chance that you're going to not have to work anymore and be a multimillionaire and be more than okay. Yeah. If you're a tech entrepreneur, maybe you'll make $1 billion overnight, and I'm super happy for those people. But if you want to do that in real estate, you have to devote a very large amount of your energy to doing that exact thing. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that I know that have sort of kind of come to that realization. It sounds like you have too. And being able to devote your energy to something maybe a little bit more meaningful than just making ass loads of money is maybe there is something to that. Yeah, it's and motivating. It also goes hand in hand with the fact that this stuff kind of builds on itself. Yeah. Like you can just sit back and let your real estate portfolio be professionally managed, be a professional asset manager. But at the end of the day, your wealth is going to continue to accumulate. And meanwhile, you can go to Turks and Caicos and go scuba diving. You can devote your time to a nonprofit organization that's helping the hundreds of homeless people in this very town, which I complain about constantly. But what I'm actually doing about it is a whole lot less than what you're doing about it. And so I think that's really great, and it sounds like both of us have kind of come to that same realization. But it sounds like you're doing a whole lot more with it, and so I commend you for that.
Oh, thank you. It's exciting.
Very cool. So, your morning routine. Take us through. I'm dying to know because we all saw the six pack, Melissa. It's no secret anymore. You're in shape. You're a gym rat. What are you doing every morning?
Yeah, so I wake up usually 5:30 or 6, and I get to the gym, have my protein shake on the way, and I spend 2 hours lifting, basically 6 days a week. And I just kind of cycle through two different...
You're lifting at 6 a.m. 6 days a week?
Yeah, get into the gym between 7 and 9, and I'm lifting for those 2 hours. Slow pace, I don't want to stress my body out, but just go a nice slow pace, and I'm hitting every muscle group twice a week. And sometimes I'll do cardio like boxing or, that sort of thing. And then once I get home, have my coffee, have a slow morning. I like to start my work day around 10. Try not to do any appointments before that, because the whole reason of becoming a millionaire for me was having a good lifestyle that I could enjoy. And for me, having a great lifestyle is starting off, the gym is my temple. I just want to spend some time there and invest in myself.
Very cool. And you've got ample time, because if you're getting up at that hour, because whenever I have my early gym mornings, I'm getting up about that same time. But I'm back home helping the kids get off to school at 8. And then as soon as they're at school, I'm on my phone and getting right after it. I should take a page out of your book. It sounds like the slow morning. It sounds like there might be something to that.
Yeah.
So, I love that routine. Very cool. How do people reach you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Melissa Dorman, very simple. Same thing, Facebook, and then my realtor group is Catalyst Group Northwest, and then I'm gonna be getting a book out there this year, hopefully.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot. We're plugging your book. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so the book is called Being Rich is Gay. And
Being Rich is Gay?
Being Rich is Gay.
Can I say that in like a 15-year-old voice? Being rich is gay.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's really like, as I grew up, there was a lot of times where people would use that as a derogatory term, like, oh, you're gay, right? And I think or
it's like, oh, that's so gay.
That's so gay, and it means bad,
gay,
right?
Yeah.
And so not only in my journey have I reclaimed for myself my authentic, queer self, but then on the other side of that, I think within progressive communities like social workers and that sort of thing in the city of Portland, there's a real animosity towards wealth and capitalism and that sort of thing. And the problem with that is when people think that it's bad to be wealthy, then they're not going to become wealthy.
Oh my God. I'm so glad you're plugging this book. I'd never heard it till just now. What it was all about. But I'm so glad to hear that you are going to infiltrate these sort of like leftist progressive type institutions and let them know it's not evil. It's good.
Not evil.
Look at me.
Yeah, and I really want to create, something that's really great about the queer community is we often take things that are ugly in society. We gentrify neighborhoods, we make beautiful museums, we make beautiful art, we do people's hair, makeup, like all that stuff, right? We take things that are ugly in society, we make it beautiful. And so I want to take capitalism and I want to take wealth building and I want to paint it in a beautiful, inspiring manner. And the way that I've built my wealth has been through win-win opportunities. And the stuff that I'm doing with the nonprofits is an example of how you can create a win-win using capitalism, using investor dollars to fund nonprofit housing so that homeless people can get housed, or the way you do seller financing because you buy it directly from a seller and that money doesn't go to Chase Bank, it now goes in the pockets of a local community person, and that's a win-win. And so I want to teach people that capitalism can be a win-win and it can promote our communities.
I love this. How can I buy this book?
Well, I'm hopefully going to be done with it by the end of the year. But if you follow me on Instagram,
by the end of 2024,
2024.
like 12, I've got to wait 12 more months for this.
I got like 20 more chapters to write, so I got some time.
Okay, sorry. Your morning routine has now changed.
Yeah. Now
it's now no longer the slow morning. You're going to finish this book, so that it'll be done by the end of next month, and so then we can get this out there because the world needs this book, Melissa.
It's true.
They absolutely need it. I didn't expect to be as stoked as I am about this book, but here we are.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Melissa Dorman, everybody.
Thank you so much.
So that's Melissa Dorman. Man, I just never get tired of a great rags to riches story. And in this case, I don't think it could have happened to anybody better. I'm a little disappointed that we're going to have to wait for her book to drop, but maybe by the time you're listening to this, the book will have dropped. So Google it, order a copy as soon as you can. But either way, I know it's going to be worth the wait because I know it's a message that the world needs to hear. You heard Melissa say during our conversation that her goal is to take capitalism and wealth building and paint it in a beautiful, inspiring manner. And I love this. I think far too often people with a left-leaning political persuasion are just categorically against anything capitalistic. And I hope those people listen to Melissa and listen to this podcast. Yes, people often pursue profit irrespective of any collateral damage, and that's not a good thing. We can agree on that. It's good to have guardrails in place to protect people and protect the environment. But how far should you take that? How much can you impact a business's bottom line in service of theoretically helping the many before a line is crossed and the businesses just don't want to operate in your locale and they take their businesses elsewhere? For both me and Melissa, we both buy and own property out of state, partly because in Oregon, Portland in particular, the government is just not business friendly, at least not to property owners. Red states have some laws that I don't agree with, but with regards to landlord-tenant law, it's no pay, no stay, and you can take back possession of your property with any reasonable notice. In Portland, any eviction is lengthy, costly, and takes months or even years. And if you want to take back possession of your property, you're ponying up thousands of dollars to tenants and lawyers. There's even lawyers now that specialize in shaking down small-time landlords because they know it's cheaper to pay the mob than it is to fight them. So my message to anyone out there in listener land who's either making laws or voting for them, and that's pretty much everybody, is to consider people like Melissa Dorman when you're crafting policy, and don't drive people like her away. Thanks for listening to this episode of Frozen Millionaires, and thanks in advance for leaving us a review on Apple or Spotify. We'll see you next time, where we will once again be embracing the cold to ignite the dream. See you then.